So in this video, we are going to talk specifically about the light-dependent reactions in oxygenic photosynthesis. Okay, oxygenic photosynthesis. We will normally use photosynthesis, PS, to abbreviate for photosynthesis because it takes a long time to write out. So you will hopefully remember or just be able to figure out that oxygenic photosynthesis makes/releases oxygen. That is why it's called oxygenic. And this is the type of photosynthesis that is done by land plants and by cyanobacteria. So if I say this cell is a cyanobacterium, you should immediately remember that it is doing oxygenic photosynthesis. You should also remember that the primary photosynthetic pigment for oxygenic photosynthesis, and thus the primary pigment for each of these two groups of organisms, is chlorophyll, which we can abbreviate CHL. So this is in contrast to bacterial chlorophyll, which is used in anoxygenic photosynthesis. But cyanobacteria and land plants do oxygenic photosynthesis, which releases oxygen and uses chlorophyll. This you all need to remember as a package. So like if I say chlorophyll, you think cyanobacteria, oxygenic photosynthesis. If I say cyanobacteria, you think oxygenic photosynthesis, chlorophyll. Like those need to all be connected in your head as you are studying. Okay, so you might remember from the previous video that the way that light energy is collected is by pigments. And so chlorophyll is the primary photosynthetic pigment. So we're going to have green equals chlorophyll. And so you'll have this pair of molecules of primary photosynthetic pigment, which are called the reaction center. We will abbreviate that here RC. Around this pair of pigment molecules in a ring will be other pigment molecules, right? And so these other pigments may be additional molecules of the primary pigment, or these other pigments may be accessory pigment molecules. So pink equals accessory pigments. So the primary pigment is the one that is required to do photosynthesis. You cannot do photosynthesis without the primary pigment. The the accessory pigments are pigments that absorb light energy at wavelengths not equal to the primary absorption spectrum. So accessory pigments will be able to absorb wavelengths that the primary pigment misses. And so the important thing about this is that these accessory pigments will dramatically increase the amount of light energy that can be absorbed and put toward a useful end, i.e. making ATP, while also, since that light energy is being absorbed and used for something beneficial, these accessory pigments provide a protection benefit, almost like a sunscreen for the plant or for the cyanobacterium, to protect them from sunlight damage. So accessory pigments absorb additional wavelengths both for a positive energy harvesting goal as well as for a sunlight damage protection goal. The accessory pigments that we talked about were carotenoids and phycobilins. You can go back and watch the end of the video before to get those. Okay, so this entire array here is called a photosystem, right? A photosystem. And so the light energy will, remember the light energy is this squiggly arrow? The light energy will come and shine on the pigments, and then all of the light energy is eventually transferred to the reaction center pigments, either the reaction center chlorophyll here or the reaction center bacterial chlorophyll. But the photosystem is this big complex or array of different pigments that all absorb light and funnel that energy just here to the reaction center. Okay. So I'm going to show you this, but I'm like reluctant for how much to show you at a time. Okay. Here we go. Oh, this is not working. You can't see it. I'm just going to draw it. Hang on. I have to tear off this other page first, and the page behind it, because the Sharpie went through. Okay. So, we have got our reaction center chlorophyll, and we're doing, so that if it is a reaction center chlorophyll, what type of photosynthesis are we doing? Oxygenic photosynthesis, right? So everything's just going to be black, so I can make sure that you can see it. So the sunlight will shine on actually this entire photosystem. So the reaction center and all of the pigments around it. And so back to this, just to show you for a second. These other pigments that are not the reaction center can be called the antenna pigments or the light harvesting pigments. Either one is fine. The important thing about antenna and light harvesting is that they are just not the reaction center pigments, actually. So here we have our photosystem, which is our reaction center plus all of these antenna pigments. So the light shines, the energy all trickles down over whatever to the reaction center pigment. Okay, I said that I was going to make this all black, but it's getting to be too much black. And so here is the awesomest thing ever, okay? So you guys keep in mind the reduction potential chart. I know that you had hoped that we had left this behind, but no. And so as the electron absorbs energy, do you guys remember when we talked about reverse electron transport and how energy is required to push the electron up the reduction potential chart to more negative reduction potentials? That same exact thing happens here. And so as the light energy is absorbed, it is funneled to the reaction center, and then bing, electrons jump out. They don't really, but electrons go to a higher energy state in the reaction center such that they go to much more negative reduction potentials. Then we need something to replace those electrons with, because they are fixing to go on the exciting adventure of the electron transport chain. And so we have water. So how do we get water in conjunction with electron transports, right? We have molecular oxygen and we give it 4 electrons, and presto changeo, we have water. And so we can also bust up the water, release electrons, and in this case release oxygen actually as a waste byproduct. And this is the oxygen release that makes this oxygenic photosynthesis. Okay? So let us keep a list of things that we are remembering. Let me get a list page here. Okay, we can use this one. So if a cell is doing oxygenic photosynthesis and it is a prokaryote, what kind of cell must it be? It must be a cyanobacterium. What must be its primary photosynthesis pigment? Chlorophyll. And what must be its electron donor? Water. So all of this is true of cells doing oxygenic photosynthesis. If it is a eukaryote, then it is a land plant, but these other two are true of any organism doing oxygenic photosynthesis. All right, so the radiant energy shines. It is absorbed by the photosystem, transferred to the reaction center. The electron pair actually gets this energy and goes to a much higher energy state, effectively leaving the reaction center. This electron is replaced as water is broken down. Electron passes to chlorophyll. Oxygen is left as a waste byproduct. Okay, so This electron is going to go through an electron transport chain. So where in the cell is this happening? Electron transport chain. It is happening in membrane. You can see the options for this at the end of the previous video. Basically, it has to be part of the cytoplasmic membrane, but it can either be the cytoplasmic membrane or an infolding thereof. In any case, and so the electron transport chain happens in the membrane as, I'm just going banana with the colors here, as the electrons go down the electron transport chain, just like in respiration, protons are pumped to one side of the membrane, creating a PMF. Ta-da! Okay, so this electron goes down the electron transport chain and has to go somewhere. Very mysteriously, it goes to a reaction center chlorophyll in the middle of a photosystem. Yes, it does, actually. And so this is another photosystem, and this one is actually called photosystem 1 because they discovered it first, and this one is photosystem 2. It is not super important that you know that, but you'll hear it lots, and so there you have it. So more, right? So what a photosystem do is they absorb light energy. So more light energy is absorbed. All of that energy is passed to the reaction center chlorophyll, and the electron takes off again and then goes through another smaller electron transport chain and ends up going to NADPH. And so this PMF will eventually be used to make ATP using the enzyme ATP synthase. So what are the three ways? Oh, you guys can't see that. What are the three ways to make ATP that we have talked about, right? There's substrate level phosphorylation, which this is clearly not, because that happens with organic carbons and in the cytoplasm. Excuse me. Then there is oxidative phosphorylation and photophosphorylation, both of which are done by ATP synthase and both of which happen in the membrane. So which one is happening here? This is our first time to learn about photophosphorylation because the production of ATP was initially powered by the light energy. So at the end of this process, we have successfully created ATP. We have successfully created NADPH. Both of these we will use in anabolism to make what we will learn later is glucose. And then we've also made oxygen, which is super useful to the rest of the planet, but weirdly is kind of a waste product of this particular process. So we make it, but it's not really considered to be a product. It's more like an extra thing that happens. If there is not enough NADP pluses to accept these electrons, then the electron gets like about here, and then it just jumps back, boing, and then goes back through this second short electron transport chain again, until there are plenty of NADP pluses. And so now let me show you the official chart from the book. Okay, so this is called non-cyclic electron flow because it very obviously, the electron starts with water and then ends up with NADPH. So the electron does not come back to water and also does not come back to the same pigment molecule. So non-cyclic electron flow. So wait, where's our list of things we have learned? Okay, so a new thing that we have learned is electron flow, non-cyclic, and we have learned ATP by photophosphorylation and NADPH by forward electron transport. Okay, so these are all things that we have oxygenic synthesis so far. Okay, so let me show you this diagram again. And so this is just it showing all of the different parts of the electron transport chain with the reduction potential chart here. So the sunlight shines. I could not get a squiggly arrow, just pretend that it is one. Onto the photosystem, the energy is directed to the reaction center pigment, which, since we are doing oxygenic photosynthesis, we know that that pigment is chlorophyll. And then all of that energy collected by the reaction center chlorophyll goes to energize electrons, which will come up here, go down an electron transport chain, which will generate PMF, and to a second photosystem, which is confusingly called photosystem 1. Additional light energy is received by this photosystem, energizing more electrons, which will go through a second, shorter electron transport chain and end up with NADPH. If there are no NADP pluses to receive the electron, then the electron will jump back to this previous electron transport chain and redo this again until there are NADP pluses. When it moves back, it does make a weensy bit more PMF. So that is something. So this is the light-dependent reaction of oxygenic photosynthesis. So there you have it.